name's Kevin Koym. I'm the founder of Tech Ranch. I like to have a really interactive style. We only have a few minutes to talk, so I'm going to try to be brief, but I want to challenge you to a couple different ideas. First, I'd really like to ask, for the entrepreneurs in the room, what's driving your startup? Let's hear from a couple of different people. What's the key thing that's driving you to do what you're up to? Yes. What you're interested in? Making money. That's a good start.
I'm also interested in that.
Perfect.
Saving lives and improving quality of life.
Saving lives, improving the quality of life. Definitely close to my heart. Yes, sir. Autism. Yeah, a really specific kind of set of issues that we're up against right now. In the back, yeah.
Look what I can do.
Look what I can do. Got it. Well, so I want to talk about this idea of being a pioneer. Let's see if this is going to actually work. Being a pioneer. My career has been, I've been a pioneer through everything that I've done. And the key thing that I actually like to focus on right now is, we live in a world that has a lot of different challenges. A lot of these challenges people haven't discovered what is the business model behind, but I'm convinced that part of what we can do as entrepreneurs is find a business model that actually really works to solve some of the world's problems. In fact, I actually would like to echo in what Peter Diamandis is actually saying, that within the next 2 decades, we could actually solve all the world's problems. It's actually kind of heady to think that we live in that age. And that's actually part of the reason I started the Tech Ranch. So you might ask, okay, who's speaking? Well, my background is I've disrupted 6 different markets. I've started startups in 3 different countries. You can see some of the startups. I'm the guy that my startup sold the first $2 billion worth of computers sold at Dell.com. I built that piece of software in my living room years ago and deployed that. Got my face on the cover of Computer World magazine, got to work for this guy early in my career, leaving college and getting to work for Steve Jobs, kind of totally warped my sense of what's possible. And it's interesting because I really believe that we're at this point in our lives that we, people that are living right now in this room, can actually change the world for the better. And actually make it a good business. Do well and do good at the same time, right? That's the whole idea. And so I want to challenge you from one pioneer to another pioneer, or to pioneers, to say, you got to think like that. You got to think like that. I want to challenge you to look beyond just building the next app to help find your friends in a bar. There's nothing wrong with helping find your friends in a bar. But, I was at this one. I get asked to be a startup judge around the world. We got to look beyond this idea of finding our friends in a bar. It's an important thing. But it's limited because realize out of the 20 or more teams that are doing it, maybe 2 of them are going to win. But there's all these other business issues out in the world. Maybe they look slightly different. There's all these other issues. There's a business model that'll figure it out. And that's what we've been doing at Tech Ranch. That's what I actually want to challenge you to do. Now, you might be working on an app that's got social media in it or something like that, but I'm convinced even for you that actually might be building the find your friends in a bar kind of apps. You can actually find a deeper soul in it. And that's what I'm here to advocate for. Okay, so 3 ideas of how to go farther as a pioneer. During my career, I've made money, I've created wealth, destroyed wealth, created wealth again, destroyed wealth again, tried it again, pushed myself out on the skinny branches. And a lot of it is because I see guys like this doing that, and it was really inspirational to me. But there's 3 things I'd like to share as an idea of what you might look at to how do you transverse this path. The first one is do something worthy of your life, worthy of the risk. The question is not necessarily what do you want to do, what do you want to accomplish, but what are you willing to feel pain for? What are you willing to feel pain for? In my case, what happened is I had a normal startup founder history. Start 6 different companies, get them to $500,000 of revenue. 2 of them I got to $1 million of the revenue before I handed them over to someone else and said, hey, it's now, okay, it's your turn to run this because I got to go start the next thing. And then I had a friend who took her own life in 2003, and it challenged me to say, I got to go beyond that, right? That's kind of the wake-up moment for me. And I just want to encourage you, don't wait for that wake-up moment as you're taking these risks. What are you willing to feel pain for? Part of your venture should be scratching that itch. That's part of what I'd like to challenge you to do. Now, in my case, after that death happened, I said, hey, you know what? I can't get to this full list of things. You notice there's 10 different technologies in my career. I never stayed in one space. I didn't just do one e-commerce startup followed by the next e-commerce startup followed by the next. I was like, okay, I got to go this direction, then I'm going to go that direction. There's software I built that's managing uranium hexafluoride, which is important to kind of keep tabs on, and as well as the very first internet banking application. But the key idea is like, I can't get to that whole list, so part of my thing is now to enable y'all to actually figure out how you can actually take on all these different issues. And this was the piece of paper that I wrote down in 2005 to say, okay, here's 10 different issues I want to take on. Now, the cool thing about what's happening at the Tech Ranch and the work we've done in the 7 different countries around the world is we've gone way beyond this, and the list is now in 1,000 or over 1,000. So it's all about changing the world. In my case, if I had more time, I'd tell you the story about what took me to Chile in 2003 to work with the first 1,000 entrepreneurs. Many of those entrepreneurs are now the essentially godfathers of the Chilean entrepreneurial marketplace. I was a startup guy here in Austin, Texas, and I was like, I got to go figure out how I can go out on the big stage, and that's what happened. And now, roughly 1,000 people were touched by that, and then those entrepreneurs have now gone off and changed that country. If you actually look at what's happened to the country over the last 15 years, it's pretty freaking amazing. I just was part of that, but it was something that I was willing to feel pain for. The idea is to go beyond just working on a salary in something that's kind of interesting. What this says, for those of you all in the back, is this is salary, this is sanity. We started a job, right? For me, I was the stock boy in one of the stores that you probably shopped in the past. Got my degree, and now I got lucky because I got to work for this guy named Steve Jobs coming out of college. But it was still my career, and then it turned into my entrepreneurial process. When I was an entrepreneur building all these different things I've told you about, still that was just my career. The event happened, and I went off to go on my mission. The mission implies that it was absolutely no money, but the idea behind it is then to get to your calling, right? That's the key idea about what to do here. Do something that's worthy of taking a risk, and something that you're willing to actually feel pain for. Next thing is go together. Now, this group of people that are going west in this photo, most people don't know the history of this photo. And I don't mean just this one photo, but I mean all the different people that went in Conestoga wagons to the west. And I mean going to the west as a metaphor for forging into new lands that we have never seen before, right? These guys took an existential risk. None of us in this room, for the most part, maybe one person, is going to be taking an existential risk with regards to the startups that you're starting. This group of people, what the story behind the picture is, these different families would have their different wagons, and they would actually pull up to a trailhead and wait for usually up to about a week before they went west. And the worst part about it is, the best part and the worst part is, all the other people, they didn't know before that moment that they went west. They didn't know. So here we're about to take an existential risk, us group of people right here. And we don't know each other, but we're going to go put our lives in other people's hands. The challenge is, right now, there's a detriment happening in the startup market out in the Bay Area, which I've lived in twice during my career, and also in Austin. In the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, part of the problem is that, I'm in social media technology and you're in water technology, right? 2 totally different things. But the issue at hand is, you and I are at each other's throats, just trying to choke each other out. Something happened in the Bay Area as it developed in the startup market that it is, and it's a great place to start something. But on this downside is, all of a sudden, it's now, you and I aren't competitors. You're in social media, I'm in water technology, but why would we be trying to choke each other out? And for me, I'm not against competition. But like if you have a Dell laptop and I have an HP laptop and that's what we're selling, okay, we're competing, let's go full out. But other than that, we got to drop that. Part of the strength that's made Austin so powerful in 20 years, I started my first company here in '94. Part of what's made it so powerful is we always had each other's backs. You could call up someone else and say, hey, will you help me with this? The history of the Bay Area is the same thing. Like there's stories of the different semiconductor companies working side by side saying, hey, we can't figure out this process. We can't figure out, and you actually would get in the car, go over to the other place, help your competitor out. And that's actually why that part of the world did so well. Why is this important? It's important to remember that the technology capital of the world 60 years ago was Detroit. And look where Detroit is today. And look at some of the negative stuff that's happening in the Bay Area. Part of what I want to challenge you as Austinites to do is we actually need to go beyond letting that Austin, I'm going to help you, you're going to help me thing go. We actually really have to fight for it. And this part of us that might have you and I, up against each other because we're like full of testosterone and want to compete with each other. Okay, well, if you've got a Dell laptop and I got an HP laptop, that makes sense. But if you're in your social tech and I'm in water tech, doesn't make sense at all. Because this is the enemy. The enemy is getting across the venture valley of death, especially at the early stages. All of you are up against this first and foremost, and this is what we need to target. We need to continue to do this as a community. The whole idea behind it, actually, one of the great things that I get to do with the technology startups that I've worked on, about doing something where it's changed the world, but important stuff, as an example, is this company, Davidio Biosciences. Now, this is one of the most exotic examples I'll give you out of what's come out of the tech ranch, but a good example was the chief scientist. There were a lot of people who said, wait, there's no way you're going to be able to 3D print skin. For years, they said, you're not going to be able to 3D print skin. What they're doing is 3D printing skin. Okay, long term, what it's going to be used for is burn victims. Right now, after a woman has breast reconstructive surgery after having cancer removed, they actually can reprint part of the skin for that application. Pretty important stuff, especially if you think about long term, about all the different needs that you might have for burn victims. But the crazy thing about this is there are a lot of people who wouldn't give them the time of day. From a standpoint of a pioneer, the thing that supports entrepreneurs like this is to have a supportive community and to get rid of this bullshit we were talking about earlier about I'm going to take you out. Because if everyone's trying to protect themselves and say, well, I'm not going to help this guy, even though he's not really my competitor, this guy over here is like water technology. Well, I want to see him fail, right? Kind of one of the things that if you've actually listened close enough in the Bay Area is actually happening right now. It's kind of weird. Then we're not going to have companies like this take off. Now, I'm quite proud of this company actually where they've gone, and they just got a NIH grant. I don't know if it's been announced yet, but it's pretty exciting stuff because long term, that's going to actually take care of some of us and some of our families. So the takeaway thought on this point is if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Pioneers want to go far. A lot of times, you're not going to have financial capital at the beginning of your startup, and for the longest time, you're going to need to use social capital versus financial capital. That's the key thing I want to say about that. Because if we actually leverage each other much more, we can go much farther and have true pioneering startups. The third thing is look beyond. Startups, you have to know some vocational stuff to build a startup, right? You need to know a little bit about lean startup. You need to know a little bit about developing code. You need to know a few other things. But a lot of people forget that to be an entrepreneur is it's like an essence of being alive, right, and living. And you have to go beyond. In my case, what happened was I lost use of my right arm in 2014. Now, in the process of launching Tech Ranch and actually taking a couple of things on, and I'm very, very active and think of myself as able to get a lot of stuff done, and then my arm is taken away. This was during the period of time that actually I was in the process of selling my house. I'd already put it on the market, and it has already been accepted. And I was actually moving the Tech Ranch from the little place that we were in into the much larger place that we're in now. An exceptionally hard time to lose use of your arm, right? In all the different things that is implied. I could not carry 2.5 pounds with this arm just because of what happened. It was a martial arts accident, totally freak accident, but oh well. I was pretty down. And the thing that I actually want to say is you have to look beyond because it's important to, learn about lean startup and stuff like that, but you need to put yourself in a position where you actually can take on more than just, okay, well, what do I do? What type of interview are we doing this week, and how much code do we have to write? In my case, one of the things I actually want to share from you, to show you an example of looking beyond, is actually a piece of poetry. Now, it's kind of silly. Some of you have heard of a place called Burning Man. Yes, a lot of high-tech guys like me, and y'all like to go to this. And I just randomly had this one photo that I took when I was there, and I'm actually one day really pissed off about not having the hands, not able to write emails back to all the different people I need to. And thankfully, this was offered. And part of what I want to say is, it's not always about how hard you're working. A lot of people are like, well, you know, I work 16 hours a day. And I don't necessarily think that that's the essence of the people who really figure out startups, you know, about comparing how many hours you worked and stuff like that. Because sometimes you actually have to be more yin, not so yang about life. You have to figure out the more elegant approach forward than just fighting it. This is the quote. Since this is hard to read in the past, I'm just going to read it to you. I'm going to read you some Rumi poetry. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. That dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Rumi. All right, so why would I read Rumi to you? It's because most of you, if you're going to be on the path of being an entrepreneur long enough, you're going to be trying to figure out Thursday night how you're going to pay your employees Friday morning. There's going to be that moment. It might not be that exact scenario, but in 22 years of being an entrepreneur, I can tell you that it's presented all the frickin' time. And actually, you take the risk. When I moved TechRanch from one place to another place, when we did the work in Mexico and the work that happened in Germany, in Bavaria specifically, and you know, a couple other things, it's like each one to go to the next level, to really do something at the next level was a big challenge. And it's stuff like this, or whatever it is for you, that you really need to have. I mean, everyone gets broken in this game. Some people know how to stand back up after that happens. So TechRanch, you can just read about it at techranch.co, techranchaustin.com. There's all sorts of programs that we have that I'd like you to know about. I'm not here to actually give you a commercial, but I'd like you to think about if you're on the journey, we're here to help you take the next step. Each one of you, the next step represents a new domain that you actually have to learn about and figure out how you can actually tap into that different community of people and how you can actually have a bunch of people behind you to cover your back. That's what it's all about. That's all I actually say about this. The other thing that I'm really proud of, and this hasn't been announced publicly, but I want to really call out to the people who are actually here to change the world. TechRanch was selected by UBI Global, is that in the top 3 social impact incubators in the United States. It'll be announced soon, but yeah, thank you. There's something powerful about when there's a little bit of religious zealotry in your startup, and I hope that you find that because, you know, and I don't mean religion, I mean like finding the soul of your business and to be a pioneer. Find something that's worthy of the risk. Find something that's going to have you go beyond and go together. And then look beyond what the normal knowledge is and look for the deeper things that are actually going to carry you forward. If you'd like more information, and sometimes I get requests for a copy of this presentation, if you want to hear more about some of our programs, just send an email to start@techranch.co, and I'd be happy to entertain that. I don't know if I haven't gotten the 1-minute mark yet, so if there's any questions, I'll take a question or two really quick. Oh, 5 minutes of questions. I didn't know. Cool. Yeah, so let me open it up for questions. Any questions for me? Yes, sir.
Okay, so you mentioned something that gets too much attention from entrepreneurs. What is a problem that you don't think is enough attention?
Let's turn it around to you. What's important to you in the world? Or name an issue. You know, right now, as an example, if you want to change, you could actually build an education technology startup. One of our startups is actually based out of India and is actually right now entering the Chilean market and then Latin American market. The poorest of the poor, you know, on learning even the most basic subjects, Now with a kiosk and some training, and either some small amount of governmental support, and in this case, they're actually paying just a few rupees per interaction, which gives them the dignity to actually buy that. That's actually something. There's a book called The 86% Solution that you might look at if you want to look at this side of stuff. I'm not saying you have to go work in poverty or anything like that, but one of the things that's interesting to think about that's different than the way, say, my father's generation looked at how to change the world, called the 86% Solution, saying that 14% of the world's market is like us. That's actually, we're not in a growth market. The U.S. market is actually declining in population and stuff like that, right? It's at some level over the world, the affluent societies are declining. But the poor that are actually at this poverty level, taking that first step out of poverty, there's quite a large market out of it. That's the 80% part of the pyramid. So it could be something as simple as education technology. IoT is going to change things. There's a bunch of different examples you can see about how even just getting light, the most basic light, in a hut in a village in the middle of sub-Saharan Africa. That being said, I would challenge you to actually, if we had some time right now, I'd actually challenge you to really find out what's important to you, because there's a business opportunity in it. I mean, I can rattle off you, since I've seen quite literally thousands of different deals, I can rattle off a bunch of different ones that'd be like, I would actually say, go deeper on actually what's important to you. And you could find something. And it might be something randomly you thought about as a 7-year-old. Another question or two. Well, if y'all don't ask me questions, I'm going to ask you questions. Oh, wait. No, you're one of the ranchers. I've heard from you. I want to actually.
I'd like to hear about your latest passion.
My latest passion is what I'm doing. It hasn't changed in 12 years.
Well, it has. It's changed a lot in 12 years.
Yeah, it's gotten more refined.
That's what I'm asking.
I mean, the main thing of what's happening is that the challenge that I'm doing is I've taken a lot of risk with my own wealth to say, if I really believe in this, I'm going to go even farther. And during the time that you and I have known each other, yeah, I have fallen down because I actually really believe this, right? I really believe that it's possible to take it to another level. I think I built a bunch of different apps that I built the very first internet banking app in the world, right? I built a trading system for Fidelity Investments.
You're building a community.
Yeah, well, building a community is part of the secret. There's no secret about it. It's actually about helping each other, right? If we can actually really presence that idea of what made Austin strong and then take it to scale across the world, something really interesting can happen. It's a challenge, but that's something. Yes?
If you were going to give one piece of advice to an entrepreneur seeking funding, what would it be?
The main thing is get to customers as fast as possible. I built 12 different skunkworks during my career. Skunkworks is where you do a disruptive result. Like you don't just do something incremental, but you do a disruptive result. In my case, so I have a passion. Well, I have a real ability to find early adopters. I think a lot of times investors are seeing individuals that haven't figured out who their early adopters are. And a lot of times entrepreneurs, especially if they're on their first rodeo, right, the very first time they're in the game, they confuse early majority customers with early adopters. Early adopters are the customers that actually love you. And even though your product only works 60% of the time, they love you. And they actually stand in line for 3 days so they can get one of these, right? The first time that Steve did, he did this, and then all of a sudden, even though the iPhone 1 sucked, it actually had a lot of people that actually really bought into it. Really focusing on identifying that early adopter thing before you go to the investor. Like if an entrepreneur comes to me and says, I'm an angel investor, if they come to me and actually talk to me about their startup, my question's all around, okay, tell me who your early adopter is. And you take a step back if there's confusion between an early majority customer, the customer that actually wants your product to work 100% of the time, versus their early adopter.
Yeah, times. So I believe you're going to stick around so you can ask meet more people afterwards, because I'm sure a lot of people will probably want to meet you and talk to you.
That sounds great. I'd be happy to. Yeah, thank you all for today. If you have questions for me, start at techranch.co is the best way to follow up on all this sort of stuff. Check out one of our events as well. We have a bunch of them, and a good number of them are free. Love to have you involved in our community. And here's to, the challenges you guys are taking on. Thank you.
Thank you.